Welcome to ESVN, the Emma Sports Vigeland Network show. My name is Emma Vigeland, and I'm here sans Bradley. It was his birthday yesterday. He's on vacation, hanging out, although he should be traveling back by now. But we have an extra special guest. Long awaited. He's been shadow banned to this point. Matt Lech. Hello. Oh my gosh, you made that look good. That looks good there with the background.
Yes, we finally got a producer in here to professionalize things a little bit. Hello, it's good to be here.
Hello. Thanks for coming on. I mean, it's a long time coming. I know you were taking it extremely personally.
Stewing every single time. Oop, I guess not this week either.
Yeah, well,
Nope.
This is the week.
My opinions on the Timberwolves have changed about 45 times since the first time I was supposed to be on this show.
Well, I mean, you can take us through that history in a sec, but I should say, if you're here, put on push notifications, subscribe, youtube.com/ESVN show, rate us 5 stars on all podcast platforms, all that good stuff. But now we're here with Matt Lech. Did you wear the Charlotte Hornets hat on purpose today?
Yeah. I have been trying to buy early on NBA teams that I think are going to be the next sort of up and coming teams. So I bought a Memphis Grizzlies hat, Ja Morant's first year. I also bought a Cavaliers hat, and then this year I decided to buy a Hornets hat, and that was maybe not the best, but I do like the color scheme on this.
I was going to say, did you buy a Hawks hat too this year?
No, I've never really been a believer in the Hawks, I'll be honest.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, what's your take on that firing? Like, seems like, I said this at the time, and I will preface all of this by saying I'm much more of a casual NBA fan than others, but it seemed obvious at the time that they should have taken Luka Doncic over Trae Young. And during that whole playoff series against the Knicks, there were a lot of Hawks fans saying you need this kind of shooting, and this is the modern NBA, and it looks like a complete joke right now.
Yeah, I mean, my understanding is McMillan basically wanted to be fired, and they're like, no, you need to stay here because we don't know what to do yet, and then they fired him anyway. Of course, they should have picked Luka. Trae Young is. I appreciate guys who are basically my stature doing it in the NBA, like around 6 feet tall.
Right.
Because like Allen Iverson, Steph Curry, like semi-relatable, even though Curry is actually a bigger guy than people give him credit for. But I mean, he was never going to be Luka Doncic. Luka's a giant guy who's as good on offense. So Trae, I never really felt like he's good at throwing alley-oops, but you can't just be that small on defense, and that's why I don't know, I don't think it's really the Hawks are screwed. They did what the Wolves, they both did the big trades where they gave up a lot of draft assets, but at least the Wolves have the building blocks to be a competitive team. The Hawks, I think they should have been trading stuff a while ago.
Yeah, I mean, but it is interesting because Murray's playing pretty well, right?
He's good
in Atlanta. But it just seems like they can't get it together.
Yeah, I mean, they don't have they have a lot of great individual parts. The rookie AJ Griffin, I think his name is, about as well as you could expect a rookie. John Collins is good. DeAndre Hunter's okay. You got Okongwu, who's a really great defensive guy. If you're in the Eastern Conference, you want a guy like Okongwu to guard Giannis. And then Capella when he's healthy. But I don't know. They don't have Anthony Edwards to compare the Timberwolves or Kevin Durant. Trae Young's not going to be that. So you're limited. And to be honest, it's kind of a problem with the Knicks too, because you got these guys who are really good, but they're not that.
No, they're not that good. But I mean, Julius Randle's been on an incredible stretch. But he's gonna, but that's also because he's coached by Tom Thibodeau. So the problem is that the Knicks might even get into the 5 seed, something like that. They might overachieve, and then once again, I think they're headed maybe for a first round exit. But this team it is instilling more confidence in me, much more so than last year. And the year before, because the Brunson free agency signing turned out to be a game changer for the entire team. They're 2 more, I think, really solid players away from they need a superstar in the end, but looks like they didn't have to give up all those draft assets for
Mitchell?
Donovan Mitchell, and he has 2 more years and then a player option, and something tells me he wants to go to the original destination that he wanted to go. I'm just saying.
That's his classic New York Knicks delusion.
I know. I know.
Let's get him later on when he's like more injury prone and like closer to the end of his prime.
No, the classic Knicks would have been to trade a bunch of assets for him like they did for Carmelo Anthony. I was just watching, it was some Knicks Twitter account put out the old hype video of when Carmelo Anthony first got onto the floor at the Garden, and I had like tears in my eyes. It was just like it was the last time that I felt that emotional about the Knicks. So I have part of why I have an emotional distance from the NBA. It's because I currently have an emotional distance from the Knicks.
Yeah.
But which I think is well deserved.
No.
But it's the wall is eroding a little bit as they become they look a little more competent.
Yeah. Let me be objective for you.
Okay.
Carmelo Anthony came to the Knicks when he was like 28, 29.
I understand this.
Donovan Mitchell's like 24, so he's got that whole prime to go, that nice chunk of late 20s.
But they were not comparable players. Carmelo Anthony, Donovan Mitchell's a star. Carmelo Anthony was a superstar.
Yeah.
And but at that current moment.
I think so. I think it's hard to say with Donovan Mitchell because I would have agreed with you this offseason, and that's why I was glad for the Knicks' sake that they didn't do it, because I agree with you. It did,
and I was upset about it.
Yeah, and it did seem like the stereotypical Knicks thing, and they dodged a bullet. However, I think Mitchell, and this doesn't speak very good about Mitchell, but I think it's sort of an excuse. Whereas Utah was just such a disaster that he wasn't able to or he was mailing it in.
Yeah,
so you didn't actually get a good sense of how good he was. And I think him on the Cavs, I think it worked out for the best because that's ultimately a perfect situation for Mitchell. The problem is back to the Knicks. You got RJ Barrett who's spinning his tires.
Yeah.
You got Brunson who's worked out as well as you could have hoped, and maybe that. I don't know. Then you could bring in Josh Hart. These guys are.
Josh Hart has brought a ton of energy and defensive prowess and scrappiness to the team so far.
But that's slightly above replacement level.
I understand that, but the point is that the Knicks are actually building a foundation that is somewhat sustainable if they do want to get a big fish, and they also have allocated a lot of draft capital for that to happen, which they held on to because they didn't make that Donovan Mitchell trade. I was the one that wanted the Donovan Mitchell trade. You were talking me down, and now the roles are reversed.
Yeah, because Mitchell's awesome.
Well, I got that. Yeah.
Who do you want?
I don't know. I used to have this pipe dream about Kawhi Leonard coming to New York, but he's never going to leave the West Coast.
Oh, so that would be a disaster too.
And now it doesn't make as
Knicks
much sense.
retirement home again.
Yeah, right, exactly. So there's not really anybody on the horizon, but I do think I was looking at Donovan Mitchell's contract situation the other day. All right, now just bear with me here. I'm going to pull this stuff up again. This is Mike Francesa stuff. All right, this is his contract here. Sport Track. He has. All right, it's loading. Okay, he has 2 more years under contract, 3 more with a player option. He could decline that player option, go out and get a max contract in New York where he actually wants to be. Big Mets fan, loves the city, grew up in the area. This is where he wants to be, and he wants the bright lights and the big stage.
So he's the guy then, but just years later?
Yeah. 2 years later. All right.
Yeah, I think that's why the Knicks are in kind of a tough spot. It's nice that they're playing competitive basketball, but you want 2 years later. There's going to be better shooting guards by that point.
Well, that's true.
You're going to have a new crop come up. You're going to want one of them instead, I think.
I have seen a picture of Luka Doncic in the Knicks jersey when he was a kid, so...
That would, honestly, that would be awesome. And, that would be, a trust the process sort of outcome if you get Luka's. I think, we can move to the Mavs.
Yeah, well, we have their first-round pick, and we can do that and also talk about that performance by the Lakers against them, which was insane.
I missed this one.
The Lakers had the largest comeback this year against the Mavericks, and the Mavericks have lost
Was this
4 out of their
pre-Kyrie
last
or
5.
after Kyrie?
After Kyrie.
Oh,
It
I
was
missed that one.
2 days ago, I think.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, that's like the Kyrie's. So I saw Kyrie this year. I went to a Nets game early December. Both Durant and Kyrie played. Durant put up like 17, 9, and 8. So it was like a good overall game, but not a huge amount of scoring. But Kyrie put up like 34, and it was just easy for him. And so, like, if I was a Mavs fan, I understand being like excited about this, but he's gonna walk after. Speaking of the guys who are just gonna walk, he's going straight to Los Angeles after this season.
That's what I'm saying. I did not understand the trade because he's a free agent after this year. He's notoriously mercurial. He's not necessarily a compliment to Luka, and the controversy that you get from him is well storied. It seemed like it was like another one of Cuban's moves where he feels like there's some sort of gap in the market that he can exploit because the guy is a controversial figure. He did that with Porzingis too, who had a rape accusation.
Yeah, and I mean that's a fancy way of saying he's being cheap because he doesn't want to pay for one of these guys who doesn't have like the the discount for personality stuff. And he ruined, like, Jalen Brunson should still be on the Mavs, and he wouldn't even need to bother with this. And you could be trying to figure out the rest of the lineup. But instead, you basically just upgrade slightly what you had last year with Kyrie and Jalen Brunson. And I think it's because Cuban's panicking. Like, I heard him on a podcast last year with Raja Bell and Logan Murdoch around the trade deadline. And he was like, or after the trade deadline, and they're talking about how they didn't trade Brunson. And he's like, no, relax. We got this all sorted out. We're going to figure this out. And no, they didn't. He was talking a good game, and then it ended up being cheap.
Well, and they're going to publicly say, well, the Knicks tampered, and his dad's a part of the coaching staff, and so and the Knicks did get docked a 2nd-round pick for tampering, but like the reason that he was even in that situation is because he wanted an extension, I think, before the season was over. And they didn't give that to him. So that speaks to your point about Cuban being cheap.
Yeah, and even that, like, I understand why Cuban didn't want to do that because it's not like Brunson is all the help. Mark Cuban, famous libertarian, is wasted Luka Doncic's career. He's failed, and like he almost did with Dirk as well. And Dirk basically saved his ass with the ragtag group and LeBron choking. But I would just say if I would love it more than anything if Mark Cuban has to trade Luka away.
I would love that too. I mean, well, for just because I've grown kind of resentful of the Mavericks because they've had a lot of Knicks castaways, and they've made more of them than the Knicks have, which is just more of an indictment on the Knicks, but whatever, it's irrational. Also, I just am resentful of the whole, like, I wear a t-shirt to games, so I'm the everyman's billionaire branding from Mark Cuban, who I've met in person one time at a conference I was covering for TYT, and I have nothing to say except, t-shirt still in that instance. Always a t-shirt.
What was he doing at a conference?
It was like I don't even know why I was there covering it. It was like there was a lot of crypto bros there. It was some business conference, but that's where I got to interview Daryl Issa.
Man, that's a hell of a event.
Yeah, he walked out. Did you not know that?
I didn't know this.
I confronted him about like some discrepancy between his, God, I forget. It was something on like the Iraq War or something like that. And he walked out of the interview and
consult the Emma mixtape.
Yeah, he gave like me some condescending pat on the shoulder and said, "You did go to a liberal college," and just walked out of the interview. But that's aside the point. All right, let's talk a bit about Damian Lillard's insane performance last night. 71 points in regulation. No overtime padded stats here. 71 points in regulation. With
like the 40-foot logo bombs. Yeah, I was talking to you about this before, and so Portland Trailblazers fans who follow me will know that I've been on the trade Damian Lillard to a contender thing for about 2 years, and he's like one of my favorite players. I think, like, I love Steph Curry, but I think I even like Dame a little bit more as far as like the new 3-point shooters are. I know Steph has a little bit more proficiency, but
But those are the two of this generation to
Yeah.
do it this well.
I remember Dame's rookie year, and he was just throwing up. I think he set the rookie record for threes in a season. And I mean, this was like back in 2013, seems forever ago. And he was talking to like Kenny and Chuck and all those guys. He's amazing, and I just want to. I basically feel like about him that I felt about Kevin Garnett and the Timberwolves. Like, it's not happening here.
Yeah.
And that's what's, I guess, like, what's weird is I'm a huge fan of JJ Redick's podcast. Sorry, I'm drinking this Guinness and while burpee. And so he had Lillard on about this time last year when he or after he shut it down for the season. And Lillard's like, I got this surgery, and actually I'm going to be better next year. And you hear athletes say that stuff all the time.
Yeah.
Like, if you go to the Ben Simmons JJ Redick interview, he's like, yeah, I'm going to be like more aggressive on offense. I'm going to be doing all this stuff. And it's like, you're saying it correctly, but like, is the doing it going to be there? And to see like Lillard come out and basically prove that, oh yeah, like to the extent he wasn't himself the past few years, it was because of injury. And he's not actually like hitting he's not actually on the decline, which is what I thought he was. Like, I thought it was like, get this guy in a contender because he's got 2 years left before he's like a sixth man off the bench that can shoot really well or something. And instead he's just really good. But I still think it brings you back to the same point of he'd be better on the Lakers or with like talent that can actually do something in the postseason. So he
has 1 year left with the Blazers, and then it's a player option. So it depends on what he makes clear to them. The kind of trade that you're talking about could happen next year.
Yeah, and he's always
to
been
the right team.
He's always been a I want to stay here kind of guy. Although he hasn't been talking about he had this interview with GQ where he's like, they asked him who he'd want to play with, and he mentioned Giannis twice, which Dame plus Giannis.
That would be unreal.
Imagine that pick and roll.
I cannot imagine that. I mean, the Bucks already, I think have a great complementary kind of a lot of complementary pieces around Giannis, but he's never played with another superstar.
And not even like Middleton's the best. Middleton and Holiday are good on offense, but they're not really good enough on their own. They're good like second options, but Giannis often needs them to be like first options. And that's when you see like the other thing I often say is they need to fire their coach because the Bucks just their offense gets so like bogged down sometimes.
Yeah.
And Lillard would be a really good solution to that.
Would be. And like say, the Blazers are squeamish about trading him in the Western Conference. That's also a decent option as well. Yeah,
and like the Blazers, you can't keep Shaedon Sharpe and Dame, I don't think. Like this is the same. It's like the Warriors, they kept all their young guys and tried to make it work while competing. And that they at least won the championship, but they could have got way more for Wiseman like 2 years ago or a year ago, instead of like, I don't know, what did they end up getting for him?
Nothing. I mean, what they traded him to
for
James
picks,
Wiseman.
maybe?
I mean, they could have done more with that pick in and of itself, but they chose to hold on to
they
pick.
could have got Franz Wagner.
Yeah, right, exactly. Or they could have traded the pick away. Yeah, I mean, so they sent him to the Pistons, which seems to be the graveyard for these kinds of guys right now. But
Isaiah Stewart, that's less people to dunk on Isaiah Stewart in Detroit.
It's regardless, that performance by Damian Lillard, it's just I read some article in Defector about it, and they were saying how he beat out the 70 that or was it 71 that Donovan Mitchell put up this year?
I think it was 70. Maybe I'll have to look that up though.
But Mitchell that went to overtime. Yeah. This was just pure 71-point game.
Mitchell's was 71 too. Yeah.
There you go. And then I think they were also comparing it to Devin Booker's just years ago when he put up 70 points. But in terms of efficiency and field goal percentage and all that kind of stuff, this just blew them out of the water.
Yeah, the highlights are hilarious. Like the guys trying to challenge shots that are like 35 feet away. He comes off of just crosses half court and stops and pops and just sinks it. And like the confidence to be able to do that, like I like it's been in the past 8 years that players have been doing that. Kobe, actually, people sleep on Kobe as like the guy who was shooting super long threes,
Hmm.
even guarded threes, and cashing them. Oh, he missed a lot of them too. But like it wasn't really that. It wasn't until that like Steph Curry Madison Square Garden game where he scored like 50 or
Yeah.
something like that. By the way, how does it like as a Knicks fan to be like mainly like
Shit on all the
legacy
time.
sort of
Yeah.
ballast for legacies.
Right.
That's pretty awesome.
They just did the at the last Knicks game, the commemoration of the last Knicks championship game, which was 50 years ago. And they had Bill Bradley come
Jackson.
on. It was yeah, he wasn't there, but it was Bill Bradley was there, and of course like Clyde or Walt Frazier was doing like the announcing and stuff like that. And I wasn't even alive for that, of course, but it still makes me emotional just thinking about that prospect of that ever happening. And I still even I get emotional thinking about that one playoff series that they won in the Carmelo Anthony era and stuff like that. That was beautiful.
Who did they play?
God, I was in college, and let me just see.
I will say I did have Carmelo on my fantasy basketball team the year that he scored. What was it, 63 or something like that?
Um, God, I don't remember. God,
Or 62. Yeah, he got
Again.
62.
62. My brain is just, yeah, they lost in the Eastern Conference semifinals. God, in 2013. Oh my God.
Yeah, that was that year. I think that
Yeah.
was
They beat the Pacers and then lost to the Celtics. So that made sense.
so they beat the Pacers. Wow.
Yeah, right.
Wow, pretty impressive.
I know. All right. Enough.
Who was on that? Danny Granger scoring 22 points a game.
That was also J.R. Smith was on that team, I believe. He was he might have won Sixth Man of the Year that year. That was a fun
I guess
part.
it's Paul George at that point too. So.
Yeah, same deal. All right, let's talk a bit about this load management debate here.
Okay.
So your guy Anthony Edwards kind of made some headlines because he was in some sort of press conference at the All-Star game, and he's how old's Anthony Edwards? 21?
Oh yeah, he's 21.
Okay, so this is the words of a young guy. This is not to come too hard down on Anthony Edwards, but this kind of sentiment's getting a lot of praise in the media right now. But Anthony is a young guy. I like him a lot. But this is like the words of somebody who has not played a lot of NBA basketball, critiquing players trying to manage to do load management. And I just think it's interesting because also we'll play this in a sec, but Charles Barkley weighed in as well.
If there's anything I could change about the league to make it better, probably just all the guys sitting resting. That's the only thing I probably don't like. Just play, man. If you 80%, you got to play. I don't like all the sitting, missing games and stuff. Like these people might have enough money to come to one game. You know what I'm saying? And that might be the game they come to, and then you sitting out. You know what I'm saying? So I take pride in trying to play every game because I don't know. It might be one fan that has never seen me play, and I'm trying to play. So that's the only thing I don't like. Guys just sitting out. If there's
Yeah, I mean, well, there you go. That's his take on load management, and this was kind of seized upon by others in the media. This is Charles Barkley on First Take. So you got the young gun and the old veteran guy here echoing these sentiments. Charles Barkley answering Stephen A. Smith's question here.
Is load management in today's NBA a big issue for Sir Charles Barkley?
It's a huge issue. And Adam, and I love Adam. He's a great guy. He's a great commissioner.
Silver.
So do
but
I.
I think what happened is I think he kind of went overboard trying to take care of the players. He's like, well, you guys don't want to do back-to-backs. We're going to kill most of the back-to-back. Now they get like a whole week for All-Star games. So he's trying to do everything possible to get these guys rest. Stephen A., I don't think fans get mad if you're making $30, $40, $50 million if you play basketball every night. But you can't make $30, $40, $50 million and then sit out games. I think it's disrespectful to the game. I think it's disrespectful to the fans. Because like I say, these fans are paying their hard-earned money. And like I say, especially, you know what's going to be crazy? In this next TV negotiating deal, we're going to have guys making $70, $80 million a year.
Yeah.
And they're going to be saying, wait a minute, you're going to make $70 million and you can't play basketball 3 or 4 days a week with all the stuff. I mean, they fly private. They got the best medical stuff ever created. And I says, you can't disrespect the fans making $70, $80 million and say, you know what, I can't play basketball 4 days a week. I mean, listen, it ain't like we working in a steel mill, brother. I mean, it's people working in a steel mill every day. I'm pretty sure they tired too.
Yeah.
But they go to work every day. So, yeah, I think load management is a big deal. I think Adam is going to have to say, yo, man,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Steel mill
And I
workers
don't know the
same.
right or wrong answer, Stephen A.
Yeah.
Because I heard Steve Kerr say go down in games. Pretty nice
72.
of him to take money out of all these players' pocket.
I
Hey,
know.
listen, when some of these lesser players who don't make all that money says, yeah, take 12 of my game checks. And I'm like, no, I want them 82 games back quickly.
That's the point, though. That's the point. That's exactly the point, though, Charles. Is that they don't have the financial ability to take games off. They are scrapping for their roster spots, and they have a finite number of years that they can capitalize on their talents that they've been working towards their entire lives, and they don't have the luxury of doing that. But the problem is not the players. It's the fact that the NBA and the NHL, which followed suit, has greedy owners that have extended the regular season in terms of game numbers to a degree that's unsustainable. 82 games is not a sustainable number of games for a lot of guys. And load management is good because they're trying to get to a point where they will give it their all in the playoffs. And the owners have set up a regular season situation where it makes it untenable for that to be the case. Anthony Edwards saying it, it's funny. I kind of enjoy it because it shows he's hungry and he's 21 years old and doesn't understand what it will feel like on his body in 5 years. But other guys, it makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately the problem is that 72 games thing. And, like, it's just too many.
Or 82.
82.
Yeah.
They need to come down to 72 or something like
Yes.
that. Because, and make it more worth the players' time. Like there's still more money for that. I think like so much of this is to do with the difference between like the 90s and now is there is slightly less precarity because these contracts are bigger. And so like for instance, Ben Simmons can say, I'm just not playing this year until you trade me because you've already given me like tens and tens of millions of dollars. I'm good. And so now we have this freak out of like, how do we coerce players to like play every single regular season game or the All-Star game? And it's like, well, you put more money up for it, or just, I think like they need to just cut the games and then have it more of a, like the reason the NFL is doing, I think so well is because everyone knows Sunday, that's the NFL.
Yeah.
Like basketball, it's like, okay, we got some games Sunday, some games Monday, a couple Tuesday, whole bunch of games Wednesday, couple Thursday, whole bunch of games Friday, couple Saturday. Like it's just not, even as an NBA fan, there's like too much to catch up with.
Yeah, it's also, I think the average fan is not that, the average casual fan does not see a ton of value in tuning into a regular season random NBA game versus a playoff game, because the stakes aren't as high. I mean, and that's the nature of also dispersing these games, or as you say, but also increasing the number of them, because that undercuts the stakes of each game.
You know what's so interesting though? Like I feel like this year's been pretty good though.
Yeah.
Like there's the greatest prospect since LeBron is waiting for whoever gets the top draft pick, Victor Wembanyama, and no teams have been definitely tanking yet.
Well, they've also flattened the odds, which has helped.
Right, exactly. And but so I think the games are still like worthwhile. And like I think the Ant point, there is a problem with the NBA where you go to a game and all of a sudden that player is not playing. Like I bought those Nets tickets I was sweating until I saw Kyrie and Durant come out of the tunnel because I paid $200 for my seat, and what if Durant's like a late scratch?
Yeah, right.
Right, like that could have Ben Simmons was a scratch, and I mean,
No, who
I'll take
cares?
Kyrie.
Yeah,
yeah. And that is a problem, especially as like all these sorts of live events become more and more outside the realm of like what a normal working family can afford. But I ultimately don't know I don't think you can really solve that beyond like figuring out a way to like do a lottery so regular people can afford these tickets, which they're never going to do.
Well, apparently they're undergoing some like negotiations between the NBA PA and like the corporate NBA, which they're trying to see if they can make regular season awards tied to the number of games played by a particular player. And they're working on that. There's like there's the CBA negotiations are happening in the month of March. I think the end of March is when they have some sort of deadline. But like, I have that issue. I have an issue with that as well because tethering those kinds of awards, which then have future they're like little badges for your future contract negotiations to playing time, means that say you actually get injured, you're gonna be exempt from that. Maybe they can work that out in the CBA, but still, I mean, I don't know how much that fixes if the owners still want to be greedy and make sure that there are 82 games played.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, this is like the conflict. The same conflict that the NFL has, where they have to do all these different rules and save the quarterback and protect the players this way, because ultimately the health of the actual people making the product is it isn't exactly, you can't really profit maximize that until you or else you're like
running them into a ground.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know, like I think it is just I think what I would do is screw the All-Star game. Everyone has rose-tinted glasses about that anyway. There's been like 2 good ones in 40 years.
Yeah.
They definitely shouldn't do a mid-season tournament, but if you're going to do that, just replace the All-Star game with the mid-season tournament. Make that tournament extremely lucrative because then players will play in it, and you only get paid if you actually participate in it. And ultimately, I feel like if you lower the amount of games and then maybe do that, I don't think
they're never going to lower the amount of games.
Never. That's so stupid.
The NFL is going to expand to 18. I mean, they just expanded to 17 regular season games.
Yeah, and like the Thursday football thing has been as far as I can tell, a disaster.
Yeah.
And yeah, exactly. I mean, it's stupid. And so like as far as I'm concerned, like what more do you want? You paid these guys. You want a whip to coerce them back to work.
Yes.
And they don't need to.
Well, that's the thing about also NBA contracts are structured in a way that is a lot more there's a lot more guarantees. I know it's not fully guaranteed in every instance, but when you compare them to the NFL, and even the NHL, it's just like on a smaller scale. Those contracts, when you get a number, that's basically what you see. And that's what you're going to get as a player. In the NFL, people were making hay about Derek Carr getting this extension where he's going to get paid $40 million a year. And they're like, oh, the Raiders are really going to double down on this guy that's been a middling starting quarterback. Well, look, they just cut him. They just cut him, and they take on $8 million or something, $9 million. I forgot the exact figure in dead cap, and then they can move on because it's all fugazi. It's just like stuff put into the contract by the agent that makes it look bigger. The NBA Players Union has been successful in getting these contracts and their figures to look as they are for the most part, and that makes owners nervous. And so I just find it discouraging that Charles Barkley, who is one of my favorite veterans of the NBA, and I saw some of his pro-trans stuff recirculating, and I love that for him. But I find it discouraging that that's his take on this particular issue.
Yeah, I mean, I get, like, I think the sensitivity they have to the like person who does put up for the tickets. I think that is like well placed. The solution is like there's not really a good solution.
Yeah,
and you kind of just have to accept that like a guy like Steph Curry might come down with a injury that he lets extra heal this time of year, or Kawhi Leonard might do that too. And it's like the thing is,
That's
like,
their right to
it's
a
their
degree.
right, and it also like isn't foolproof. Like a lot of these people who like their bodies do seem to be breaking down, and it's like, okay, do they break down at 30 or do we let them like deal with it as they see fit, and then at 33? And like the real problem is like if basketball tickets weren't so expensive, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. And like that's ultimately like, okay, do a lottery so there's more equitable access to seeing games live.
Right, exactly.
Which would also take money out of the owners' pockets, so they're not going to do that.
Warren from Toronto says, I agree with Matt that this year the NBA has been awesome, very competitive, lots of talent, and improvement over the KD Golden State years, where I feel at that time the regular season was pointless. I think a lot of people kind of felt that way.
Here's also, I just want, while we're on Ant, it's funny the Ant saying that because like part of it is he had to basically play himself into shape. At the start of the year, it's like, why isn't Ant dunking? Why hasn't he had a dunk yet in the first few games? And everyone's like, is Gobert taking up too much space? And Ant's basically admitted, and it's the reason he wasn't upset about not being selected for the All-Star game, is that he came out of shape. And this is from an episode of the Austin Rivers podcast on The Ringer, where he's talking about all of the snacks that he likes to eat.
Oh, beautiful.
Tell you, boy, them hot fried good. I don't know nothing about none else.
So we're talking about how many realistic packs? You said 21 on
Yeah,
GQ,
you know
but
I was being a little, but I probably eat one a day.
What?
Nah, at home, if we in Minnesota, look, real talk. If we in Minnesota, I probably don't eat that many. I probably eat one every 2-3 days. But if we on the road, every day we on the road, I got to get a pack.
I don't know when it was this season, but at one point, Pasha, we were on the road. It was really early in the season. And he had bags with him, like a backpack with him. And I'm thinking, he was unzipping it to put something in there. I'm thinking it's just like a normal travel backpack like I got. But I realized he already had one on his back. So I'm like, what is that backpack for? This man opens his backpack and it's full of snacks. Like just every candy and snack you could think of. And he's sitting there looking at me like, I'm like, this dude.
Yeah.
And then he go close the game tomorrow.
Yeah, what other snacks were in there besides hot fries? What'd you see?
Some Reese's, some Jolly Rancher Chewies, Starburst Chewies, probably some.
Bro, it's not Halloween, man. What do you have?
The white chocolate Hershey. Boy, what? I'm gonna make sure I can give me some snack going, some honey buns.
That's amazing.
What I like about Ant is he's like 21 years old. His athleticism is maybe it's parallel, but not among skilled players in the NBA. Like it literally looks like Michael Jordan when he jumps sometimes. Like Ja's got a little bit of this too, but Ant's like he's so strong, and he talks about this later in the interview that like, and he could have been like a great football player too. That if he isn't working out, he just puts on like so much weight and becomes a tank, and that's basically what he was at the start of the season. But I just love how he's played himself into shape, and all of a sudden he's crushing it again. But also Luka did this too, and it's very relatable that like basically the two best under 23 or whatever athletes also like to get busy and let
loose
go
in the off
season.
season. Yeah.
And then they like, because Luka does the same thing. He's like out of shape. This season has been a little bit better, but last season it was the same thing where it's like, what's going on with Luka? And it's like, oh, he's fat because he's been partying all summer.
Yeah, right. I mean, I like it reminds me again, just returning to my base knowledge of football. DK Metcalf, who just go on your phone, Matt, and look up a photo of him without a shirt on.
Oh, I've seen DK.
Okay, there you go. He says that on game day, he quote, I eat one meal a day, drink coffee, and eat like 3 or 4 bags of candy. For his workout routine, he gets coffee that holds him till around 4 or 5 p.m. He orders water and candy, gummies, Lifesavers, and Skittles, for example, at around 4:30 p.m. before eating dinner at 8 or 9 in the evening and then sleeping. Oh no, that's just his average day. And he's like, just these kinds of athletes, it doesn't really necessarily matter. But maybe if he keeps this up, the load management thing might look a little bit better when he's 28.
That's the thing is like LeBron was never really like that. Apparently. LeBron was always very like, okay, let's get the dietitian. We're always going to be in peak good shape. And like to me, I can't relate to that because
No.
if I was a star, if I had a season where everyone's like, "This guy's the next thing," I'd be like, "I am part."
Joel Embiid's another good example of a guy that eats like shit.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I mean, at 7'3", you're just burning a lot of calories. It doesn't matter at any point. But yeah, so we should talk about the Timberwolves.
Yeah, go ahead. You have the floor to talk about the Timberwolves, your team.
I am a big Timberwolves fan. I felt so the Gobert trade this summer. I was initially a little bit. First of all, I wasn't happy about it. I wouldn't have done it. At no point would I have traded all those picks.
Seems like a lot.
It does. Although, just to touch on Vanderbilt, who's very good. He's going to show people how good he is on defense in LA. They already had Jared McDaniels and Naz Reid, so like he wouldn't have had playing time on the Wolves. And same with Michael Beasley, like Noel, and you got other guys who I think, you can replace Beasley. So like as far as the players they gave up, I like them both, but you needed to move them anyway. And then picks, who knows? And also Kessler looks pretty decent in Utah. But that said, like you kind of needed to. It's a shit or get off the pot moment as far as like the Wolves and Towns. And I love Karl Anthony Towns, but it didn't work with him as the 5.
Mm-hmm.
He's just not defensively imposing enough.
But that was the idea with Gobert, right? It's going to be a supplement to those deficiencies.
But then you get the other problem of like, okay, now you play Towns at 4.
Mm-hmm.
And to their defense, what I've heard early on in the season is they were experimenting with a different type of setup that maybe was early in the season with Towns and Gobert on the floor at the same time. That was trying a little bit of something. Whereas if they were going now and Towns was healthy, they'd be doing what they were doing last year, which is Towns where he is and Gobert basically just doing what Jared Vanderbilt was doing in the dunker spot.
Yeah.
And like that I think could work. And like that's why I hope it works. I hope Towns comes back and does it. But if that doesn't work, then you've tried it with Towns at the 5 and you tried it with Towns at the 4 with as good of a ring protector behind him as you could. And then you've seen both ways. And if it doesn't work, I still think it could possibly work if Towns can figure out a way on defense. But if it doesn't work, then you move him. And then like maybe you trade him to the Knicks for a whole bunch of picks.
Well, I mean, again, hometown kid, I was about to say, from New Jersey.
Yeah.
Right around the corner from where I grew up.
I really like Anthony Towns and I want it to work. But I also like, I feel like he has some composure issues that I like, especially during the Grizzlies season or series last year. Like I don't fully trust him under pressure.
Well, I kept thinking he was young, and I just realized, I mean, he's 27, and he's been in the league for, I mean, he was drafted when? 2015,
15.
and that seems like yesterday, but it wasn't.
Yeah. and so you've had this whole time, and he's a great shooter, and a lot of teams could use him, but like you have to make way for Ant at a certain point, and Ant plus if you can get him working well with Gobert and Gobert can still finish lobs and stuff, and then you move Towns for like, I don't know, Pascal Siakam or Scotty Barnes or some other. I mean, it's tough because like Towns is almost the perfect guy to pair with Gobert, except he's slow-footed because you need a 4 that can shoot the ball.
Yeah.
And so like I don't know, like I feel so good about what Ant's doing, and I feel okay about like the Wolves' defensive identity. I think is really great. I love McDaniels. He's one of my favorite players. I think him and Ant are like as good of a wing combination as you could have going forward. And so now it's like, I guess hopefully Towns can get back, and I sort of feel like it's not going to happen this year. I'm not sure if he's going to be back for the playoffs or not. I hope the Wolves make the playoffs because that'd be a disaster if they don't. And
they're in a play-in slot, but it's like,
yeah.
I mean,
but I think it's sort of like the first half of next season is when it's either Towns is working or you have to get rid of him.
Well, he has 1 year left on his deal. It feels like they couldn't really sell high on him this year given everything that's happened, but you're still going to get less return on an expiring contract next year, I would say. But I feel like they could get rid of that contract and then make the roster a little bit more robust in other areas, and hope they could get shooting elsewhere. Maybe they don't need to get it from their bigs. I don't know.
Yeah, it's tough with because you don't have because you're gonna have McDaniels in there. He's not a great shooter, so you have Ant's a great shooter. Most threes under 21, but you're gonna need like I don't know. Conley's a short-term thing, and Naz Reid's not bad, but he's not like a knockdown shooter. Like you do need something super, either the really great point guard or like a good four.
Yeah. Seems like a trade will probably be in the works. It's just kind of one of those things where the marriage feels like it just needs to end between the two of them.
Yeah, I think so. Like I said, like I think there are things that like the Cavaliers play two bigs with Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, and that works well.
Yeah.
But Towns is not Evan Mobley on the perimeter. And I don't know, like it's because Towns just started streaming. I appreciate his breakdown of I think Ant had like 40 or something recently. But at a certain point, like you got to be more imposing defensively, or it's just not going to work.
What did you think of Mike Conley as an acquisition?
I think he's sort of like that was a smart move, and I appreciate that move because you need someone. The body language with Rudy Gobert has been absolutely horrible.
Mike Conley's an adult in the room.
Yeah, and like it's a little bit better recently. But particularly like the first like half of the season, after the first few weeks when it looked like the season wasn't going well, Gobert would like dunk it. No one's dapping him up. Like, no, people don't seem to like Rudy Gobert.
Yeah.
Like the big problem with the Gobert thing was,
and by the way, just as an aside, like in that kind of tension between Donovan Mitchell and Gobert, we all know who is the more likable character.
It's Donovan Mitchell. I mean, both just personality-wise and
just in hindsight too. Yeah.
And Gobert, like, it didn't seem like people liked him. And the other thing that was a big problem is, like, we talked about how it seemed like he was there to address the Timberwolves' needs. But both Cat and Ant were caught off guard by the trade, which is, look, I don't say you let, like, the Nets let Durant like trade Jared Allen for DeAndre Jordan. Like you got to step in and say no to players.
No, you talk to your franchise guys.
Exactly.
That's what happened with Aaron Rodgers. They drafted that quarterback 3 or 4 years ago and didn't tell him. And he's one of the 5 greatest quarterbacks of all time, and they just didn't let him know. And he took that as disrespectful, which I agree.
Right. And it's like with it's like I thought you were doing this for Towns.
Yeah.
And he didn't know about it, and they were both caught off guard by it, and they didn't seem like they really wanted to play with him. They did okay. Like there were some decent Towns to Gobert's connections, but like Ant also to bring it back to Conley. Conley knows how to play with Gobert. He knows how to like throw it in a place where his brick hands can actually like grab onto it, and I think Towns being out has actually been good for the Gobert trade because it's forced Ant to learn how to play with Towns. Like they're hooking up on lobs and stuff like that, and Ant needs to learn how to throw those, and he doesn't really. Like he's new to that, and there's not a better person to practice with than like people shit on Gobert. Gobert has the most dunks of any season of any NBA player.
You wouldn't think that
because of Mitchell and Conley in Utah throwing him lobs and stuff, and so like I think I'm tentatively like I don't think it's as disastrous as people say because I think you do have that big chip with Towns, and like you lose those picks, and Danny Ainge will probably draft somebody well with those in Utah, but
they're still lottery tickets, and the lottery in the NBA draft. And I'm using like not the lottery portion of the draft, but the notion of the draft being a lottery, like that's probably more hit or miss than any other sport, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, we were just talking about the Sixers. Like the Sixers literally planned to get all these picks And they drafted Embiid, great job. Drafted Simmons, but missed on Mikal Bridges. Who else?
The guy in Orlando. Shit, what is wrong with me?
Brandon Ingram was the other one.
God, what is wrong with me? Orlando. Marcus Fultz.
No, they drafted
Markelle
Fultz.
Fultz,
They
yeah.
did draft Fultz, yeah.
Markelle
and
Fultz, yeah.
He's doing better now, but I'm forgetting who the other guy that they didn't draft with. Besides, as somebody saying in the chat, besides Bridges and Brandon Ingram, it's a third wing like that. But anyways, like you don't do a good job, even if like it's a crapshoot to a certain extent.
Yeah.
And so like the picks, somebody might turn into really well, but like even when the Timberwolves do have picks, they select some other schmuck over Steph Curry, for instance.
Right.
So like what? I would have preferred it was a better player than Gobert. Be nice to get Mitchell. Mitchell and Antwood and McDaniels would be a good front court, or back court. But it's not. As a Wolves fan, I'm okay with where we're at right now.
Yeah, I guess the 2017 draft when they took Fultz overall, Jason Tatum went third overall.
That's it. Yeah, the best.
But I mean, also De'Aaron Fox, Lonzo Ball. I mean, not aging as well because he's struggled so much with injury. But Jason Tatum, that's a huge miss. That's a huge miss. But so the Lakers miss on him too, because they took Ball. So Markelle Fultz is playing okay in Orlando. It's just such a no one's pays attention. But they're a little bit on the up and up with Banchero. But
they made the right pick.
Yeah.
I think. I mean, unless Chet is really great and surprises us next year, I think Paolo was the right draft pick there.
I can't believe that San Antonio is this bad and they're actually in the Wembanyama sweepstakes. I almost hope that that's where he ends up, just because I'd like to see Pop deal with him. Yeah,
I mean, they're clearly tanking ever since they traded Deontay to the Hawks. Like all they have is, I'm forgetting his even name now. They have a decent Keldon Johnson, who's like good, like three-ish guy, but. Yeah, Wembanyama that'd be the. Popovich just coaches another 10 years because he gets Wembanyama.
Yeah, what we made some like political. You made some political analogy to it. It was like, why are you overseeing? Why do you want to be a part of this rebuild? God damn it! What was it?
Oh, I don't know.
All right, well. We'll think about it.
Yeah, that was good though.
It was good. Rob from Dedham. Not only did Philly miss on Fultz, they traded up with the Celtics to get him over Tatum. Yes, that's rough. Tatum's playing out of his mind once again this year. Left wing Limbaugh. Anthony Edwards is a homophobe. Likes tossing around the F word.
He did say that, and he's got he's dumb kid. Got plenty to learn on that front.
21 years old. Yeah. There were Josh Allen, who is beloved by the rest of the Buffalo Bills players, was caught, tweeting rap lyrics when he was 15 ahead of the draft with the N-word in them, right? And that's wrong, 100%. But I just think we've got to, as a society, give some grace to children or like really young people to move on. All right, well, you want to talk about Mikal Bridges, and then I'll get some NHL and NFL talk in here? Yeah,
so like I said, I was happy to see Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving play the Nets versus the Raptors in December. And at that point, it's like, damn, they're actually looking pretty good. Mm-hmm. This might be a decent dark horse Eastern Conference team. And then, the trades and stuff. For the Suns... it's just like, are they going to be healthy? Who knows? I couldn't be happier as a Nets fan, like what they've got out of this. I
agree.
Because and I feel like it was
Bridges is the definition of 3-and-D.
Yeah. But like Draymond Green made this point, like the whole like sports media, and like I have my problems with Kyrie. I think he's, up his own ass on a lot of things, obviously. And, not as smart as he thinks. But, people act like they've ruined the Nets. It's like, no, them actually deciding to come here and then, leaving, but like getting assets to come in return set the Nets up in a decent way, and now they have so
well,
many.
they at least they were able to stop the bleeding. They cut ties at the right time period and didn't go down with the ship.
Yeah,
I mean, I wouldn't say it's like an overall win for them as an organization.
But on the other hand, like, what if he never signed here, and Durant never signed here, right? Like, then you never even get to trade them. And you got rid of like Karis LeVert and like Jared Allen. There's guys that you miss, but
and they gave up all those assets for James Harden. Let's not forget.
Yeah, and a lot of the picks too. I think Jaylen Brown, I think was one of those that went to Boston. But you look at like teams, how certain teams are set up. The Mavericks, I can tell you, they did, even though they did the trade, like the Nets have so many players who contending teams are going to want. Dorian Finney-Smith, Mikal Bridges. Mikal Bridges is my favorite player. Like, I love the guy. Again, speaking of the JJ Redick podcast, he's just on it. Like, I think I'm a fan of any lockdown defenders. That's why perimeter defenders. That's why I like McDaniels and Bridges. But also like a guy who's genuinely, who's clearly like a hard worker, which sounds ridiculous, but like you see the improvement in the game, in his game, like where you weren't really expecting it, and like see players talk about doing that and then actually doing it, I think is really impressive. So like he comes here and scores 45 with the Nets, basically playing the Kevin Durant role. I love that.
Yeah.
And so now like the Nets, they have, I mean, Simmons is a complete disaster.
Yep.
And it would be nice to have turned Harden into something more than Ben Simmons, but at that time, Harden wasn't playing either. So like, I sort of feel like, and Nick Claxton's also good. You got Seth Curry, who is probably better of a regular season player, but yeah, I don't know. The Nets are very, very fun, and I'm a big Mikal Bridges fan.
Well, are you gonna go try to see them a little bit more at Barclays?
I thought about that because tickets are probably going to be dropping
pretty
in
cheap,
prices.
right? Yeah. I mean, especially if I don't know what their record is over the past few years, but yeah, they've lost 2. They might be dropping. So you could potentially see a playoff game for fairly cheap in Brooklyn.
Yeah. And I mean, Brooklyn's tickets are always sort of cheap too, and it's a great place to watch a game.
Yeah, it's not so cheap at Madison Square Garden, unfortunately. All right. I'm gonna just bang out some NHL stuff, talk about Justin Fields, and then we can get out of here. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
Does it feel good to finally get all this off your chest?
Yeah, I feel this is, I guess, what therapy is sort of like.
You're right. Yeah. Well, I mean, anytime I say that. But
yeah, that's not true.
That's not true. The problem is Matt and I were doing a very polite dance where I felt I was like infringing on his time and did not want to ask him. And
meanwhile, I'm like, anytime you need me.
Really wanted to come on and like, no, you did not ask me that much. Let's be real here. You did not ask me that much.
No. Okay.
No. I mean, come on.
Leave
come
that
on.
as an open question. Maybe.
No, I don't think so. I think we'll have to have Bradley in here to correct the record. All right, so the NHL, lots of white people in it. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, Matt.
I had some idea. Yeah, that's most of the hockey games I've been to. White people.
Yeah, not the most fun. I've been to a lot of sports games, but whenever I go to a hockey game, most people standing at attention with the national anthem and being really enthusiastic about it, and like lots of cops getting awards and standing ovations, coming to sing the national anthem, that kind of stuff that happens at Madison Square Garden all the time. But just some notes, because Friday is the NHL trade deadline and things are really heating up. An aside, we had our first goalie goal in 3 years. Linus Ullmark on the Bruins shot it into an empty net from his end. So like how hockey works is at the end of like the game, when a team is down, they'll do a desperation pull of the goaltender so they can get
another offensive
6 skaters on the ice. And so the Bruins goalie shot it from his own end into the net. Pretty exciting. I'm a little bummed because Igor Shesterkin of the Rangers has been trying that for a while and it didn't work out. But probably the biggest fish in the NHL trade market, Timo Meier, has been acquired by the damn New Jersey Devils, who the Rangers are likely going to play in the first round of the playoffs if all holds. Because the NHL's done this really dumb thing where instead of doing seeding like 1 through 8, they're doing intra-division seeding because they're cheap and want to cut back on travel. And also they're saying, oh, they'll increase rivalry. But it's like, okay, but I already know who the Rangers are going to play probably now, and the season ends in over a month.
Also, increase the rivalry. Doesn't it make sure all those rivalrous matchups are in the first rounds and not the later rounds?
Yes. So I think that they're bullshitting us, but because they want to cheap out. Regardless, though, very formidable. Like the East right now, Matt. Just to give you a sense of it, hockey standings are determined by points. You get 2 points for a win, 1 point for an overtime loss, 0 for a regulation loss. And so for teams that have the total points, the top 6 teams in the East right now all have more points than the top team in the West. And the Rangers are that 6th team. So it's going to be a complete bloodbath. And it's gotten worse because there have been a variety of trades in the East, including Ryan O'Reilly to the Toronto Maple Leafs, former captain of the rebuilding St. Louis Blues. They're sending him off to play in Toronto, and then the Rangers just acquired Vladimir Tarasenko. They're unfortunately likely to acquire Patrick Kane. I mean, I know he's good. He's just like an accused rapist, and I don't really want him on my team. But the biggest deal here is the Timo Meier trade. The Devils are just like freakishly talented right now. They're too small and they needed a forward that was going to be a little bit bigger, a little bit more physical, and they get that in Timo Meier. And he has a $10 million player option. I think that's next year, and they'll have to find a way to make that work. But they signed their young stud, Jack Hughes, to a long-term contract that's very team-friendly because the cap is theoretically going to go up. And so they're going to be able to make this work and have Timo Meier as a right wing on their team. I'm terrified about that coming up in this matchup with the Devils. And they did not have to give up much for him. But at the same time, what the Rangers are doing right now with Patrick Kane is bizarre. So like the Rangers yesterday played a game against the Los Angeles Kings. They dressed two fewer players and played them for cap machinations. So they were playing 2 players down so they could make enough cap room for this guy to come. He's the former, 3-time champion in Chicago, generally viewed, I think, by a lot of people more progressively minded as a terrible person, again, accused of rape, also helped cover up sexual assault within the organization. Not my favorite person. And last week I went on a whole rant about how I don't want you on my team, stay away. But turns out it looks like he's going to force his way to the Rangers no matter what. The whole East is just ridiculous. And
the Rangers, or we say the Devils?
The Rangers, but they're getting this guy named Timo Meier, who's no baggage there. But the Rangers are getting this guy, Patrick Kane. And it's unfortunate. Go ahead.
So you're from Jersey.
Yeah.
How did you pick the Rangers over the Devils?
Well, I became a Knicks fan because my dad was a Knicks fan, and he was a kind of casual Rangers fan. That was how I got, because like they play in the same arena, and the Rangers. But in reality, I've said this before, but my high school boyfriend was a Rangers fan, and we're still friends. We still get along great, but that's kind of an embarrassing origin story.
Yeah.
But yeah, he got me into it. But I'll never forget like the night I stayed up till 1:30 in the morning because they were in a triple overtime playoff game against the Washington Capitals. They played 2 games in one game because they had to end it. And it was like one of the most bizarre sporting events I'd ever seen in my life. But it also just implanted on my heart to such a degree because it was so high stakes that's kind of what it did. But my boyfriend at the time, he was a hockey player, and so that's kind of how I fell in love with it. But
so you never had like a Jersey Devils dalliance?
I did have one. I did. My good friend took me to a game. She's my best friend from growing up, And it's just like the Devils are kind of cheaper, more rinky-dink. Like the Rangers and everything that we hate about James Dolan for the Knicks plays in the Rangers' favor because he has a big pockets and loves to spend, but he doesn't know anything about hockey and knows that. So he just does all the spending and lets the hockey guys do what they need to do. For the problem with the Knicks is that he wants to spend as much as he can, but he doesn't know shit and thinks he knows a lot, and so he gets impatient. And his identity is so tied to the Knicks and not the Rangers, because like the celebrities come to the Knicks games, and he feels very emotionally connected to the Knicks as opposed to the Rangers, which he just kind of owns as an aside. But they're, unlike so many NHL teams, they're actually in the B of billion in terms of like valuation, and so a lot of guys want to come play for the Rangers. And MSG is like one of the bigger hockey arenas that you could play at. A lot of the Arizona Coyotes, for example, their owner can't even pay the bills, and they're playing in a mid-level like college stadium right now that seats like 3,000 people. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but not by much.
Right.
So that's my story.
So they're the prime ticket, as opposed
they
to
are
down
they
market.
Well, I mean, yeah, and honestly, and when I was falling in love with it, this is what's easy about like sports fandom is the Rangers were in the playoffs for a long period of time with Henrik Lundqvist, because he's one of the greatest goaltenders ever, but they were a weirdly constructed team at that time because they had a defensive head coach, and so Lundqvist was having to win games for the Rangers, letting in 1 or 2 goals pretty much every night. And that's just not sustainable in the modern NHL. So the Rangers had to rebuild. They tore everything down. And now they're like back on the up and up. And they're in this 3-year window where it's expected that they win a cup based on like the moves that are being made right now. So it's very high stakes, if that makes any sense to you.
I feel it.
Yeah. So come May, if I'm, in a bad mood, I'll keep you guys updated. But yeah, that's really what's going on with the NHL trade deadline. Patrick Kane looks like he wants to play on the Rangers. That's apparently what he wants. Not sure I want him here, but I guess, my tune might change once I see him score some goals. But and then also as an update, the Lightning gave up way too much for Tanner Jeannot, who's like a second line winger. Inexplicable, but that's that. All right, lastly, so I don't take up too much of Matt's time, I did want
so apologetic.
I know, I'm a woman. There's been this debate in NFL circles about Justin Fields and if the Bears should trade him since they have the first overall pick. I've been seeing some critique of that debate. I've been seeing people say that it's insane when you kind of get a quarterback that has the physical gifts and the specialness that Justin Fields has, the leadership that he has. You don't let that go. And I see that argument. I understand that you're kind of taking a risk no matter who you get in the draft, and it all depends on who the Bears kind of choose to or how they choose to evaluate these quarterbacks. I mean, I don't think Bryce Young is worth giving up Justin Fields, but I don't know. I mean, CJ Stroud is pretty incredible. That's just my assessment of it. He's going to be going into his 3rd year as the quarterback of the Bears. He's one of the greatest runners at the position ever already. And he has a good arm, right? And we've seen quarterbacks like accuracy improve with Jalen Hurts this year, for example. And I think that honestly, Justin Fields' arm strength is better than Jalen Hurts. But that's just like an example of a guy that you can mold into being a starting quarterback in the NFL. And then he has that elite trait with his running. But I just think it's a more interesting proposition than people are saying. Selling high on a quarterback who may not have a long career because of running, despite the uncomfortableness of that conversation, wouldn't be a bad strategy for a team that is the worst team in the NFL for a reason and picking first overall for a reason. It's kind of an NBA mentality going into the NFL. And I think sometimes scouts and talent evaluators don't bring this kind of analysis to the NFL. But say, you're the Atlanta Falcons and you want Justin Fields and they have a run-based system and he would be perfect for that, or Lamar Jackson for that matter. Say you're, I don't know, the Jets, they want a quarterback, or another team that's in a bit of no man's land and is interested in getting a quarterback as one of the final pieces. Getting 2 first-round picks for Justin Fields for a team like the Bears that has nothing on the roster, that's not a bad idea. And it might be better for Justin Fields long term. The whole model right now in the NFL is getting a team together and building around your quarterback's rookie contract. Well, Justin Fields is already 2 years into that rookie contract, and the Bears are terrible. So what is the plan? For me, I think that they should seriously consider it. I don't know if you have like a thought on that, Matt, but it's just like the player in and of itself and his specialness is not the entirety of the consideration here. It's about building a team around somebody. And we've seen so many times players flame out and then they get blamed for it because they're not surrounded by a winning system or winning players. And I fear that could happen to Justin Fields. Even if they trade out of the first overall pick, but they could keep the first overall pick, take whichever quarterback they want, and then trade him for other first round picks with another team. I don't know. That's just a thought that I have.
Yeah, I mean, going back to and the calculus is probably different with, 52-man roster, NFL or whatever, but for the NBA, I like trades because I like getting good players onto good teams. I don't like to see, like with Damian Lillard, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
Like I want to see them on teams that can actually do something with their talents, and you can go overboard. I was somebody who, like, when the Celtics last year, they started like the first half of the season really slow again, and it's like I have no emotional investment in the Celtics as a franchise. I do like Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, so I was like, maybe trade those guys to like more fun teams. Get Jaylen Brown on the Mavs or something like that, with next to Luka. And so like that's the way I look at sports. I support players more than I care about teams. The extent that I have any sort of loyalty towards the Wolves or the Nets, that's secondary to liking the players. And so I think like you have to look at your window of competitiveness like the NBA teams do. Are you actually going to compete at any kind of level that justifies you having this guy and frankly wasting his life? That's
my thought. I mean, right. It's like, if this were the Giants and I had an emotional investment in the team, maybe my calculation would be a little bit different. But I mean, as Justin Fields as a player is a special runner. And he does have in the right system. He has a strong arm. He can make every throw. It's just like his system that he played in at Ohio State was a little bit more rudimentary, and you have to have the right offensive personnel around him. But you see this with the Eagles. Like the Eagles were in a situation where they had the team completely set up and they got their quarterback and then they got to the Super Bowl. I mean, even Mahomes' second year as a starter, the team was set up. They got to the Super Bowl. If you actually have aspirations about building a team, it's not about the individual guy. And once the Bears are ready to contend, Justin Fields will be in his second contract. And he might not be the same guy because of the nature of the way that he plays the game. So,
and do NFL players, do they typically re-sign when their contracts expire, or do they sometimes test free agency?
It's very hard to get to free agency in the NFL because there's this thing called, for first round picks, you can pick up a 5th-year option. Then after the 5th year, there's this thing called the franchise tag, which is, you give them a 1-year deal fully guaranteed for some like market percentage. This year, it's like $33 million a year for a quarterback, but it depends on the position. And then they can tag you a second time, which is another increase, but that happened to actually Kirk Cousins before he went to the Minnesota Vikings. He was tagged twice by the Washington franchise and then forced his way to free agency and got a big payday. But but he's a pocket quarterback that doesn't take any kind of much physical risk with his own body. For a guy like Justin Fields, there's a good chance that he's not able to cash in once that time comes around, and he's been wasting away on a Bears team that is in the midst of a rebuild. And so for his sake, as a fan of his skill set, I just worry about that. But I understand the Chicago Bears fans haven't had a franchise quarterback, arguably in the history of their entire team.
I mean, yeah, Jesus.
Never. I mean, when they won in '85, that was because
I forget that guy's
the
name.
defense was historic.
Who was the guy even?
I don't know.
Was it McMahon?
Bears quarterback '85. I mean, the Jim McMahon. There you
Yeah.
go. But like they went to the Super Bowl with Rex Grossman too. Like they've just not. And Trubisky, they've been
Rex
struggling
Grossman's
with.
not even like a top 5 Florida Gator quarterback.
The closest they had was Jay Cutler, and they traded for him from Denver, and he was also like apathetic and kind of a huge asshole. So, a big arm, but still, it's just like not. I think it should be seriously considered, but I don't think that they will actually end up pulling the trigger because the fan base is so invested in the player, which makes total sense. Just for Justin Fields' sake, I'm bummed about it because I want him to have a longer career. And being on this Bears team, man, does their offensive line suck. Man, do they have one of the 3 worst receiver rooms in the NFL, even after trading for Chase Claypool for no reason. Man, does their running game suck. Man, does their defense suck. Like, even with Eberflus at the helm, they're coached well, but it's a long road for the Bears, and I don't think that fits within the Justin Fields timeline.
Yeah. Well, they'll have a good time going 4-12 and beating the Vikings twice.
There you go. There you go. Perfect. All right, we're gonna read some IMs and then we're gonna bounce. Thank you to Matt for filling in.
Of course.
Will from Indiana. Awesome seeing Matt on here, and for some reason I really want to hear the iconic Jimmy Dore voice defending Colin Cowherd and Jason Whitlock.
I can't get there right now.
Yeah, maybe next time. Warren from Toronto. I agree with Matt that this NBA year has been awesome. Oh, wait, I read this already. Rob from Dedham. Have either of you guys listened to the podcast Whistleblower about Tim Donaghy and the NBA refs? It gets into how the league controls refs and has some in their pocket to maintain TV ratings.
You know, I've heard bad things about that. I haven't listened to it myself, but Bill Simmons had a guest on, and they took the shit out of that documentary quite a lot, I think.
Rob, that seems a little bit
Donaghy's a
difficult
liar.
to believe.
Like,
yeah.
Donaghy is not a credible source. I mean, even by his own admission.
It says, which was most evident in Game 6 of the 2002 Western Conference Finals, where the Lakers went to the line 27 times in the fourth quarter alone.
Yeah, I don't. I've even heard about that specific instance. Like, I don't even think it's as cut and dried as that.
Aaron is not cool. Knicks 5 in a row tonight versus Celtics, potential Eastern Conference final team. All right, let's not get crazy. But do they play the Celtics tonight? God, the Knicks really are just playing a bunch of games in a row right now.
Did you see the Celtics Philly game the other night?
No.
It was amazing. Tatum scored a buzzer beater. Well, not even a buzzer beater, like a shot with like a few seconds remaining to hit a 3, like off an inbounds to win it. And then Embiid comes back and put him up by 3. Embiid gets the inbounds, throws like a 3/4 length shot, swishes it, but it was like the buzzer was just going off when it was off the tip of his fingers.
That's beautiful. I mean, they might they're probably going to meet at some point.
That'd be a great series, and I like James Harden looking also really good, not getting enough, I think, props for his sort of resurgence, like being a point guard.
Yeah.
I think they're fun.
All right, just a few more. Tater Tot. I would be a lot more worried about Fields' trajectory if the Bears didn't have so much money to spend in the number 1 overall pick. They have the tools to be competitive next year and for Fields to take a big step forward. They're going to try the model that they did in Jacksonville with Trevor Lawrence. I just think I don't know if I have faith in Eberflus to turn them around in the way that Doug Peterson did. And I think that the Jaguars had an underrated amount of talent on that team before they took the second.
Yeah, what's the Bears' strength right now?
Nothing. They have nothing.
So
Nothing. Yeah.
maybe work on one of those before you try to get a star player.
Like seriously, it's truly one of the most. I mean, them and the Texans have depleted rosters, and the Texans at least have a franchise left tackle. Kowalski, ESVN needs brown leather chairs and brown liquor centric discussion. There will be an interesting audience. Yeah.
Light up a stogie.
Yeah, exactly. All right, and the final I am of the day here, Antifa Lockhart. Yes, Emma, you and everyone who is even entertaining the idea of the Chicago Bears of Arlington Heights should trade Justin Fields is insane. What should the Bears do? Go back to the quarterback whack-a-mole? Do you remember Mitch, Dalton, Grossman, Cutler, Krenzel, Hutchinson? This is insane. The Bears finally have a QB. Exile anyone who suggests trading him. If Poles trades him, he needs to be fired from a cannon into the sun. There you go. I mean, that is, that's what I anticipated.
Bears fan checking in.
There you go. All right, guys. Really appreciate you all. Thank you so much to Matt. Thank you so much to Matt for filling in. Bradley will be back next week. We will see you then. Bye-bye.